Hey everybody, this is Mark Smith, host of Digital Roughnecks, and I am here with MaryBeth Clifford from Step to Compliance, and we're going to be talking today about some brand new regulations that are going into effect tomorrow, actually, in New Mexico. And we're also going to be discussing the new Manchin Inflation Bill and what the impact, some of the impact that's going to be on oil and gas companies. So welcome, MaryBeth.
Thank you.
Now, we've had you on a previous episode where we actually talked about the Supreme Court decision and what impact was having on that. And so for any of you who missed that, go to digitalroughnecks.com and make sure you watch that episode. But you are the compliance service manager for Step to Compliance, and you track, and this number I think is right, 1,300 different rules and regulations. Yes. Nationwide. Are there really that many?
There's more than that many. That's just the ones that I have currently, constantly finding new ones.
Wow. Okay. So anyway, suffice to say, MaryBeth is an expert on rules and regulations for the energy sector. So it's great to have you here and to talk about this. So we just spent the last time before I hit record, summarizing this New Mexico thing. So let's go through some of the, the new changes that are going into effect. And so the first one, of course, is it goes into effect tomorrow. So how long have they been sort of negotiating these new rules?
The very first draft of this rule came out in July of 2020. So it's been over 2 years.
Okay.
In the process.
All right. And just to give for people that, people that are in Colorado kind of know what Colorado level regulations are, and they really are the most stringent pretty much in the world. Then people know, of course, what they're subject to outside of Colorado, EPA Quad A today. And we've had other episodes on Quad BC, the new changes that are coming there. So if you don't know what those changes are in Quad BC, make sure I'll have a link to that in this episode show notes. But just want to give you a perspective that it's New Mexico sort of landing between, between the new EPA standards and where Colorado is. They're fitting somewhere in between. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, let's talk about this one. So LDAR frequency, everybody wants to know because that's, one of the biggest changes, right? So, right. So it's where does it fit between, let's say, where EPA is going quarterly, mm-hmm. and Colorado, which is literally down to continuous.
Yeah, so it's definitely pushing towards the EPA standards of quarterly. There are still some sites, existing sites that would be on like an annual or a semi-annual basis if they have a lower tons per year threshold of VOCs, but you're definitely seeing those push towards a quarterly monitoring for well sites and tank batteries. And then as you have here, moving towards monthly for gathering and boosting and gas processing plants that are above 25 tons per year of VOC emissions.
Okay. And then, also they're doing something like Quad B, I guess, and C, like, as you said, quarterly. Mm-hmm. And then, so this is another one we talked about here, the no grandfathering clause, like in right. Quad C. So tell me about that.
So this is going to impact every site within the counties affected by this rule, and including existing wellhead only sites. And it even is going to bring in inactive wells that will have monitoring. And they do have a timeline of compliance to get started with that. But in essence, you have like 4 years to make sure you've hit all of those sites.
Okay. So compared to where they are today, how does that differ?
A lot of the requirements currently have been around the Quad A standards or okay. what is in the GCP for oil and gas. So this definitely is more stringent and pulls in a lot more things.
I know like some of the operators that I talked to who are looking at Quad BC, the C part really impacted them, where they're saying, okay, before I was doing A, new sites from 2016 forward. Then B says, okay, now double my frequency from every 6 months to quarterly. C made them go back to all sites, which had the effect with some of the operators of increasing their manual LDAR resources by 7x.
Yes.
So yeah, depending on how many old versus new sites you have and stuff like that. Okay, so this could be a biggie right here, no grandfathering deal. Okay, let's talk about the kind of the areas that are impacted. They kind of made, tell me about this bullet point here.
Sure. So the rule is actually called the ozone precursor rule, and it's designed specifically for any facilities that are within a county that has exceeded 95% of the EPA's ozone standards under the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And their goal here is to avoid those counties slipping into non-attainment status. And so there's a very specific list of counties. They do mention that as other counties hit or exceed that 95%, they will get pulled into the requirements of this rule as well.
Okay. And I don't know how these particular counties stack up in terms of how big an impact this has, but.
Well, Eddy and Lee are some of the biggest oil and gas counties
Okay.
in the state. So we're looking at big impact just right there.
Okay. So let's see. All right, let's talk about these two things, 95, the control device and combustion destruction efficiency.
Yeah. So this has actually been relaxed a little bit from the very initial draft of the rule that initially they wanted to see a 98% efficiency from control devices. And now, regardless of existing or new, they want to see a 95% control efficiency for VRUs, VRTs, any control device that you're routing to. And then there's a caveat that goes along with that, that if that control device is then routing to a combustion device of any kind, that combustion device needs to be achieving a 98% destruction efficiency.
Do they have anything in the rule that talks about how you actually have to measure this? Because like, for example, in Colorado, there's going to be, flow stack test. Yeah,
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Yes. So there's testing around TOs and ECDs and heaters and things like that to prove the efficiency.
And do they specify like does it have to be tested every year, every quarter, every 5 years?
They do specify. I don't remember. It varies based on the equipment type.
Mm-hmm.
And there again, they also have a timeline for compliance. So for your existing units, you have 30% need to be tested by 2024, 65% need to be tested by 2026, and all 100% by 2028.
Okay.
So they lay it out.
Okay. So this is also new, right? Regulates pre-production. Every flow vessel needs to be captured and routed to a combustor.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that now just in contrast, right? So you don't have that with normal EPA. You definitely have that with Colorado, where Colorado requires continuous monitoring from literally 10 days before the drill hits all the way through completion. So this is sort of, I guess,
kind of in between.
In between. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's talk about then this. Okay. So tell me about this LACT unit requirement.
Yeah. So storage vessels, they have new requirements there, as they do with all of the different equipment, but they are on new storage vessels that are receiving an annual average of 200 barrels of oil per day. They need to be fitted with a LACT unit.
Okay. So then the storage tank requirement.
Yeah, so they're also moving towards, they don't want the thief hatches opened pretty much ever, except for like 2 times a year to do an inspection and to test and calibrate a measurement device of some kind. So all storage tanks are going to need to be fitted with some form of measurement device that allows them to determine tank levels without opening the thief hatch.
Okay. So I'm putting in a plug for, Clean Connect, and full disclosure, I'm, the president of Clean Connect. So just straight up, but there is a way to solve this with a non-invasive measurement method like Clean Connect. And we use thermal cameras. We can see a tank and we can measure as accurate as guided wave radar. So for those of you looking at this saying, that's impossible, it is possible. We have clients doing it every day, every minute of every day. Okay, let's see, record keeping. So how is this different or new or whatnot?
This is probably going to be one of the biggest challenges of the rule, is how New Mexico wants the record keeping done in a very specific format. And they want operators to implement a centralized database that will hold literally information about every piece of equipment, every process, every inspection, every maintenance activity. Anything that happens at that site will be held in this centralized database for the purpose of submitting an annual report starting July 1st, 2024. It's called a compliance demonstration report. But they also are going to use this database for records requests. And so the rule outlines that they will have 24 hours to respond to a records request. And then it will get uploaded through a portal in the New Mexico website.
Okay. Very good. All right. Well, hey, so any last things when we're talking New Mexico, then we'll switch over to this new Manchin-Schumer bill.
It's definitely worth taking a read through, but we do also have a summary that we've put together highlighting the main points of it and outlining the compliance timelines for each of the different types of equipment and processes. And I'll provide you a link to that.
Great. Perfect. So anybody watching this, when you come to the Digital Roughnecks episode, in the show notes, I'll have links to all those, the summary that MaryBeth just mentioned, and all the appropriate links. Okay, switching gears. So the Manchin-Schumer Inflation Reduction Bill. I'm going to take a stab at kind of summarizing this, and then MaryBeth and I will discuss it a bit. So it does have, it does a bunch of things, but how it affects the energy companies, it does have $1 billion for methane mitigation efforts. Has over $850 million for EPA to fund methane mitigation grants. $700 million for methane mitigation for marginal wells. It doesn't tell them how they spend any of this, by the way, but at least they're saying, hey, we'll put some money in to help with this. I thought this was probably one of the most important things. So EPA will collect a waste emission charge based on emissions inventory as defined by EPA Subpart W. In our last episode, MaryBeth, you mentioned that Subpart W itself there's a bunch of changes in there. Can you kind of summarize what's coming? And
yeah, so there's currently proposed amendments to Subpart W, and they are really, after lots of research, going to be updating emission factors for the oil and gas sector. And those emission factors, in some instances, change 3 to 10-fold from what they are currently. So big impact as to the total greenhouse gas emissions that will be reported on if this goes through.
So for those watching that, this is what it means, right? So now today, if like you're in Colorado and you turn in your an emissions inventory to Colorado, you actually do pay a fee, right? So outside of that, you don't. You turn in emissions inventory, you've satisfied the requirements, that's okay. But in this new bill, when you turn that in, and MaryBeth just told you, those emission factors could go up 3 to 10x, you then pay a fee. So you multiply that total emissions time, an actual factor that the EPA or some government agency will give you, and you'll write checks for potentially multi-seven figures as a waste emission charge or a tax, essentially. So this is a big deal. There's required greenhouse gas reporting. Doesn't go into a lot of detail, but most likely it's going to end up being like the new required SEC climate reporting. What does that mean? For all of you who thought, hey, I'm not a publicly traded company, I don't need to worry about it, you now need to worry about it. So it's like saying, hey, whether you're public or not, you got to do SEC-like climate reporting. Related. So there's another bill that kind of tacks onto this that has a big change. It eliminates the oil and gas accelerated depreciation, i.e. the intangible drilling costs. And essentially they're trying to be net neutral or whatever and say, hey, but we're going to give an accelerated depreciation for anything renewables. So for those of you who use that, which is pretty much every oil and gas company, to accelerate depreciation, this is up for grabs potentially. So anyway, these are some of the summaries. Any thoughts about this where, beyond the subpart W changes, MaryBeth, what do you?
No, I don't have anything beyond that. I think there's a lot up in the air and there's a lot to kind of worry about, unfortunately, with this.
Yeah, so this is most likely to be voted on very soon. It's moving through, right? Manchin being, one of the key guys who was kind of shutting down the Build Back Better deal and now has signed on to this. So it's very likely this may go into effect. So we thought it was worthwhile to discuss. Anyway, so there's a couple of things, we just wanted to get everybody updated because those who watch this is what you do for a living, is this impacts your job. So if you got any more questions, we'll have our contact information, myself and MaryBeth, so you can reach out, get details, and talk specifically how it can impact your company. With that, MaryBeth, I want to thank you for being part of this and doing your job of staying up on these 1,300 regulations so that, we don't have to, and that knowing that you're on top of it and can help figure out how to comply and stuff, which is what we also do at Clean Connect. So anyway, thanks again. Yeah, great.